I do not call him or her a noble person because of their lineage or highly born parents. If they are full of greed, hatred, or delusion, they are just pretentious people. But if one is free of greed, hatred, and delusion, that is who I call a noble person.
I think it's so wonderful that you get to give your beloved minister a break. That's such an act of generosity on your part. And to use the summer to focus on these etchings that you have in your window of these different spiritual practices that are all welcomed here at the UU Church. And so today I get the honor of being able to speak to you about Buddhist practice, and particularly this wheel here that you have in the window, which is known as the Dharma wheel. And so as Mary was just reading, Buddha was all about teaching nobility to everyone. And so he taught, his teachings are named such. He had the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths were that there is suffering, that there is a cause of suffering, which is clinging and grasping and fear and wanting things to be a certain way, not being with the world the way it is. That there is cessation of suffering. One can learn skillful means so that suffering releases. It doesn't mean that pain isn't here. The body ages and things happen, but we don't have to suffer with it. We can be in alignment with it. It can be a spiritual practice even. And then the path to ending suffering was known as the Noble Eightfold Path. And I love this line that Buddha said, that nobility is not about your ranking or your, birth or money. It's about your heart and your practice and what you commit to. And so he said, if you practice this Eightfold Path, you will become more noble, and you will also be a happier person and find your way to enlightenment. And so we're going to talk about the Eightfold Path. What I loved about this idea of nobility is that if you practice to become a monk with the Buddha, it didn't matter who you were, it was when you signed on. So when you signed on, you had to bow to everyone in the Sangha, the community who came before you. And it was a wonderful practice, because if a king came and said, yes, but I'm king know-it-all, he would say, lovely, you have to bow to Jimmy, who came yesterday, who's a pauper. And so everyone had to bow to who had studied before them. And it broke down this idea of better than and brought in this beautiful idea of we're all in this together and this is community. So I love that. So how do we become noble? The Buddha said that these 8 practices, and I'll go through them in just a moment, that they create a couple of things. One is ethical conduct and moral discipline. So as you do them, you're practicing to be a nicer, kinder person. And he said, this isn't just to be nice to the world. I have to tell you, he said, it benefits you as well. So when you stop stealing, you'll sleep better at night, right? So it was ethical that helped both you and others. Yeah. The second practice in this Eightfold Path is the concentration practices. So this is about mindfulness and practicing meditation and doing practices that help us grow a strong, steady heart and mind. And out of that practice, he said, you will then start to have insight. You'll start to have wisdom. Things will start to download. You'll start to make connections. Kind of like our little friend Luna, who when she shared the bananas and she saw her monkey friend so happy, she realized, I actually feel good, like sharing bananas. I think community is a little more important than hoarding. Wouldn't that be great if somebody figured that out in the world? Or a lot of people. So that's what we're working towards. Yeah. So it gives you peace of mind as you do these practices. It also gives you mental strength. It gives you a generous heart and ways to calm yourself, kind of like that little piece that we just did. Just that simple practice of breathing out your tension and stepping back into the inner quiet, that when that happens, you find the place that Dogen is talking about where the moon does not get wet. You can be having tension in your life, and yet there's this place inside where I can rest and take a seat. And it can change everything. It can change how I react to my pain, how I react to pain in the world. It's a powerful, powerful experience. And then this wisdom guides us. When we see things clearly, and this is what the Buddha was pointing to, when you begin to see the world clearly from this quiet place within, it changes your agency, it changes your actions, it changes your attitude. And so you may look at someone, for example, who, I'll give you examples. Sometimes I work with people in work and they'll say, oh, my father was so angry and scary. And then they dip back into this place inside themselves and they get really still. And I have them look again at that memory and they'll say, oh my goodness, he was scared. I didn't know my dad was scared that day. And then I say, so now that you see he was scared, maybe of losing his job or he couldn't provide, what arises now? And the person will say, oh, compassion. And how do you want to deal with your father now? It completely changes our trajectory when we have this wise seeing. Yeah? So I just want to go through them. We begin with right view, and that just basically means that we understand. They're written down for you, so you don't have to, you can just listen and you have notes, you can read them later. Just let it wash over. But right view is just the understanding about the Four Noble Truths, that there is a path to do this differently, that I can cultivate myself. And so because I understand that, I then go to the next wheel, the next knob on the wheel, and that's right intention. With that understanding that I can change myself and I can change my world, I then set right intention. And the right intention is to practice. Much like in the songs and the prayers that you're reading here, they're so beautiful because they talk about, I can cultivate myself. And so right intention is, I will practice meditation. I will have a practice that opens my heart. I will go ahead and go to Sangha and practice with others. Because Buddha said of getting in touch with enlightenment and the teachings, he said the most important is community. Because community is where you find refuge and they remind you, right? It's kind of like Luna with the turtle, right? She has her little moments where she's a little skewed off and she can go back to the turtle and he can say, hey Luna, you didn't think about this. So Sangha and community is so important. Coming here every Sunday, such a rich practice. And that sets the stage for us to then deepen into our practice. And so our practice, the first three, right speech, right action, and practicing right livelihood. Right speech is, I'm going to try as best I can. And this is not about perfection. We're going to talk about that at the end. It's not about perfection, it's about practice. In Buddhism, they have a joke. Why do you think we call it meditation practice, right? Because you don't do it well all the time. But if you set out to have right speech, which is, I won't gossip. Okay, I'm going to stop myself from gossiping. Or I'm not going to tell a lie. Or I'm going to work on my tone. I know that tone was a little harsh. I'm going to try to soften my tone. That's practicing right speech. Right? The next one is right action. I will refrain from being mean, stealing, taking what's not mine, flirting with someone who's not mine, those kinds of things. It's like I set out to do actions that are filled with grace and kindness as much as I can. Yeah? And then right livelihood. Right livelihood is having a job that is in alignment with my values. So it's like, and if you have a job that's in alignment with your values, going to work and living those values while you're at work. Right? So you don't, you know, some people say, oh, I have a righteous job. I do the right thing, but they go to work and they're kind of a pain in the butt. Right? And it's like, well, no, that's not right livelihood. So it's not, you know, doing a job where you feel bad about it at the end of the day, where you come home and now you're having headaches because you're like, I just can't do this work anymore. If that's true, then you have to go inside and find out what's true for you. And then if you do have a great job, try to do it well. Try to do it with kindness. It's a practice, right? Practice. And that cultivates your ethical development. And it makes you happier and it makes everybody around you happier. And then the Buddha said we have right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And this is the part of the wheel where we're developing our mindfulness and our strength of mind. When people would come to the Buddha, he didn't often ask them to start right away with meditation because he knew their minds were on fire. And so he would start with things like, do some nice actions. Or how about go out in the world and be a little generous? And then come back and I'll teach you how to meditate, right? Because he knew something had to cool the mind a little bit because the person was really revved up and hot. And so once you've done those practices, then you're ready for meditation. Now you can, you know, a lot of times people will tell me when I'm doing interviews with people around their meditation practice, they'll say, I stink at meditation. I'm terrible at it. I can't concentrate. I try to be quiet and then my mind just goes, right? And so what we start with right there is kindness. It's like, of course your mind does that. That's what minds do, right? That's why in the practice today I said, notice what's here. Is your mind chattering? Is there pain? That's okay. Gently breathe it out. Let's gently start to release it. And after a few of those breaths, now step back and find that quiet place. So always attend to the busyness first. Don't judge yourself for that. In Buddhism, we have a lot of mindfulness for this, a lot of love, a lot of care for this. So there's no judgment in this practice. Yeah? And with that, we then get deeper and deeper in our mindfulness and our meditation. And as the mind stills and the heart quiets, that's when the insights start to come. That's when a flash of a memory comes and you go, oh, my father was scared. I thought he was just being mean. Or, oh, I know what to do at work now. I was really stuck. It comes in the stillness. So wisdom comes from stillness. Not trying to be up in your head thinking. Stop and let the inner wisdom come forward. That's how we really change the world. And so when we do this, we are much better prepared for doing social justice work. We're not coming from our anger or righteousness. We're coming from compassion. We're coming from a big view and seeing the world as it is, in its pain, in its being lost. I used to tell my kids all the time, there are no bad people. All evil in the world is perpetrated by owie feelings. And so when kids were mean to them, I'd say, he must have owie feelings. She must have owie feelings. And then my kids started coming home saying that. He has owie feelings. He was really mean to me today. And I was like, yes, don't take that on. So I want to do one last practice. As you go through each of these, you know, there's lots of ways to practice, but I'm just going to give you one. And that's, again, to introduce some gentleness. We always introduce gentleness. So I'm going to say these words, and it's called the loving kindness practice. And in metta, it's called, in Buddhism, it's called metta, loving kindness. And so if you take one of these pieces of the wheel and you say, okay, I'm going to practice right speech this week. You could take one a week. And let's say you find out you're not doing very well at right speech. You've been gossiping and doing whatever. What I would invite you to do is to practice metta right there, right where you're stuck. So I'm going to say the words, And I'm going to say a line, leave a pause, and let you say it to yourself. And then I'll say a line and leave a pause and let you say it to yourself. And just notice what that's like. So you can close your eyes again if you like. May I be filled with loving kindness. Oh, you can say it internally. Yeah. So I'll begin again. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be well and healthy. May I be safe from inner harm and outer harm. May I be free. May I be happy and content. And just notice how those words wash over you and how they make you feel. And so I invite you to let yourself have this practice so that you can come into ease, let go of your fears and your pain, and then you become a light unto yourself, as Buddha said. Be a light unto yourself. Be your own teacher. Release your own pain and open your beautiful, beautiful heart.